in this session, we're basically going to look at refactoring some legacy tests. And this could go either way. It's the first time I'm trying something like this, so please try and bear with me. But if you have questions in the chat, feel free to ask away and I'll try and answer as I go along. Or there'll be time at the end anyway. So I'm not expecting to be able to complete this exercise, but it's just to try and show the approach, how to try and keep your code clean, how to start by refactoring tests, because I think it can be a slippery slope when you start to look at refactoring. It can be quite easy to over-engineer a solution. So we're just going to take it step by step and take a look through. So not only as well, very quickly, sometimes you may be applying for a job. So again, what they're trying to look for is approach. You may get this exercise. So these are the tests that we're going to be looking at. So there's just 5 tests, and they just check various things. Now you may be looking at this, and certain things are jumping out at you that these things could be changed, which is true. But sometimes you're time boxed, especially for like an interview. And again, they don't want to see you over-engineering things. They want to see your approach to see if there's thought put in there. If you apply certain principles like not repeating yourself, so keeping the code easy to maintain, easy to read. So that's what we're going to try and do today. And we're going to go through it step by step, as I said, test by test. Normally I'd use Git, and after each small change, I'd be committing that. But for time's sake, we're not going to do that today. So I'll just run the test very quickly, and hopefully you'll see what's going on. So this refactoring test challenge as well was actually taken from the Ministry of Testing UI Automation Week. So I can share that with you as well if you'd like to try this challenge or share your approach with me. So tests are just running at the moment, and they're a bit slow. We just have to wait a couple of seconds. 2 more left. Okay. Great. So we can see there's an issue here. So 5 tests have run, but this hasn't closed either. This web driver window. So we're going to shut this for now. So the tests are passed. That's always a good point. Whenever you pull down code, always try to run the tests, make sure they work in your machine before trying to do anything. Otherwise, you could be opening a can of worms to try and resolve some of these problems. So we're going to start just at the top then. We'll take a look through. So without sort of jumping ahead at the other tests, we can see it's creating a new instance of the driver, initializing a new Chrome driver, and then it's going off to this page. So what I like to do is just go and have a look at the page that it's trying to go to. And then it's trying to find an element here. So one nice thing you could do is you can copy the selector that it's using, right-click the page and inspect. Hopefully you can see this on the left, the window a bit wider. So if you do Command F or Control F on Windows and then paste, you'll see that now by using that selector, it's highlighted this button, or this link rather, which is down here. So if we just have a look at what's going on. Okay, so it's using CSS selector to find this link, but what we can actually do within, just to try and make this a bit easier to read, it's got the text of admin panel. So straight away, what we could do, I'll leave that line there a second, to help if I could type properly. There's the concept of link text. So what we could do is we could go back, and it was admin panel, click. Okay, I'll comment this line up a second. I'll just make sure that this test passes. Everybody can log in. Credentials. Sorry, it's running the test. I'll stop at the first one. So it's worth noting I could do a lot of typos and things. I'm not naturally a Mac user. I don't use this version of Visual Studio. So I'll stop the test there. You can see the test is passing. Okay, so that's a good sign. And then next, scroll back. What have we got? So next is trying to input. Right, we go to sleep. just comment that out. So you may be tempted when you start looking at tests, you think, well, if you've done any UI automation, you know that thread sleeps are not really a good thing because they're adding on extra time. So rather than waiting for a condition, it's just waiting for that 1 second. So I'm not going to be tempted to try and just go through and remove all of these until I actually know what's going on. So I'd just remove the one, run it again. And it's a slow process, but at least when something goes wrong, you can narrow it down to actually what the problem is. Okay, it's working. So now on the admin panel, it's trying to do send keys. I'll log out, that's a problem. So it's guessing it's username and password, so we can inspect this. Because what you see is on the, here it's using XPath. Now, I generally don't like XPath because it's quite slow and, IDs just seem cleaner to me to read, or link text. But sometimes, understandably, you need to, use XPath, and that's fine as well. But if there are selectors available, so in this instance, we can see for this element, there's a username ID. Now this should be unique, ID should be unique. So what we can do instead, we can change this, and we can have the, I'm leaving the top line there just for comparison second. These. So you'll see that, it's a lot cleaner to read. It's just finding the element, the username, sending keys. So we could do that. Let's run this quickly, make sure that this find the correct element. Because I didn't search the page to see if there's another admin ID. That looks fine. It's gone past that point. Again, I'll remove the sleep just to see what's going on. Again, just to reiterate, it's very easy sometimes to just start to get carried away and start. We highlighted here that the admin input, we've changed it to username, we've removed the thread sleeps. Quite sort of easy to just jump straight to this, update this element, remove this, get down to maybe here something's gone wrong. So it's good just to have that flow and just to be able to see what's going on. So we'll do the same for the password field as well. So we'll just inspect this. So it's got an ID again. Just do the same. This. Okay. So I think it's quite often as well, what you see is when you see a code base like this, I know I'm guilty of this at times. I think, well, I see the thread sleeps and think, well, can I use an implicit to explicit waits? Remove all thread sleeps, clean up XPath for IDs, move out to page objects, which hopefully we'll get a chance to see a bit of in a second. But again, there's always that danger of over-engineering things. It's better just to keep it simple. And then, when you have to sort of change something, then implement it rather than just introduce additional things to have to maintain. Okay, so that's looking good. And this float right, username, password. So this is the login button. So if you inspect this, it's got an ID of new login. Okay. So just do that instead. Take this out. Okay, cool. So notes as well, it's a lot quicker now when it's giving us this feedback. The only thing you might have noticed as well, when we went to this page originally, it's already on the login page, but we've got this extra step, which is clicking the admin panel. So, don't be afraid to remove things. And also, if the test isn't really adding any value, don't be afraid to sort of delete the test either. Great, okay. So now we're at that point, I'm going to just clean this up. Okay, that's a lot nicer. So this thread.sleep isn't ideal, so just try and get rid of this. Okay, so it looks like it's struggling. Okay, so it's failed, basically. I'm just going to time out in a second. So I'll just put this back. Well, reduce the sleep for now. Because again, it's quite easy to start to sort of just jump to like an implicit weight or something like that. But again, if you do something like that, you need to understand really sort of the differences between implicit and explicit weights, because the implicit weight will be for the whole test suite for everything that runs. So you need to sort of weigh up the right option. So I'll just stop this test. So I've got too many windows open. Cut this off. Okay. So let's run this test again. Okay. So definitely needs to wait for something that's just this. I probably want to mess around, even though this could probably go a little bit lower potentially. You know, we know there's something that it needs to wait for here, so we need to look at that. So the next thing after it's logged in is this nav bar. Okay, sorry, shut the window. So if we just mimic doing the same thing, get to that point. Password. It's okay. Okay, inspect. Search for that element. Okay, so what it's actually doing is it's trying to find this. Dave, hopefully you see it down here. Okay, what's it doing? I'm making sure that it contains rooms. So instead, what we could do is inspect this element. This. Okay, this was probably used for some sort of debugging. We don't want that anyway. Let's comment this out a second. So what we're going to try and do instead is we're going to try and find the rooms link, which will basically do the drive find element by link text. So this will give us back the element. Rooms link displayed. So slightly better. Perhaps there's something that we can do better here, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to continue a second. Okay, so that's cool. We've got this as well, where it's initializing the driving clause. We want to look at that second. So again, if we look at what's going on here, there's some common stuff. So it's doing all the login again. So what we could do for now is just copy this out and paste this in. Okay, let's just run that test. If everyone's saved and displayed. Yep, passed. Okay, good. Okay, so now it's trying to do the. What are we doing on time? Okay, so now it's trying to send 101 and 101. And if you watch what it's doing, it's trying to basically put in these values. Yep. Okay. So what we can do instead is, sorry, if we have a look at these elements, so we can see It's got unique IDs. Find element. Sorry. Try to find element by ID. Sorry, I tend to talk a lot to myself when I'm coding. Okay, so hopefully this will be okay. There we go. Yeah, so populate the value still. Okay. And again, we'll just do the same for the price as well. Okay. ID. Sorry. I've got the added challenge of using a Windows keyboard on a Mac as well, which is always nice. Okay, so I'll just do this last change and we'll see where we are. Okay, so that's all looking fine. So that's good. Don't quite like this either. Okay, we're looking on time. So I'll just talk about a few other things then, because in reality, I would start to continue to just do this bit by bit. Looking to remove thread.sleeps. I'm sure some of this is quite basic for some of you. But one of the things I wanted to mention was this. So what we've seen already is that we're calling the same URL. We're calling the same send keys to log in. And people might be sort of quite sort of get carried away and think, well, actually, right, so let's extract this out. So one thing you could do is extract method. We could call this, what could we call it? Login to dashboard or something. Maybe we could think of a better name. So all of a sudden now all the logic for this is contained in a little method, and then again, what we could do down here is we could start to say, well, we don't need to repeat all of this again, so we could just do this, which is fine. Then you may think, well, actually, what if we want to change the username and password? And it's always that thing of what if. But what I try to encourage you to do is not think of what ifs, just do for what you've got to do now. So when you look through all these tests, I've already done these, obviously, so I know what to expect. But the majority of these tests where they need to log in, this is just for sending an email. But they will always use the same admin username and password. So, I'd propose not to get carried away and start to say, well, actually, let's, have extra variables. So then if we want to, pass in these, then we could, and then you'd have something like this where you'd say, well, this now will just pass in the admin and password. And then here you'd pass in admin, obviously, and then. So whilst in the real world, you probably want to do something like this, where you could pass in, sorry, username password. Spell. I'd propose that you don't do this type of stuff unless you really need to. So just like, keep it as simple as possible. Try and resist the urge to, potentially over-engineer a solution just because you can. If you don't need it, don't add this extra stuff where you've got to, do this just because you can. So another thing to sort of that we could do is to try and clean this up. Again, just in the interest of time. There's, hopefully you're aware, there's a page object model pattern. So you could start to do that, where you move a lot of the common things out. But again, we don't need to do that yet, so let's not do that. It's trying to address, in all our tests, we are looking at this, creating a new driver instance and then closing it. It's pretty fair to say it's in every single test. So what we could do instead is, so I'm using NUnit. And what we could do is void private. Initialize. Just take this out. And then here we can say the driver, so it's a new instance from driver. So what this will do, let's get to that in a sec. I've got this test up now. Oh, sorry. Just delete that, take that out. Project new instance of driver. View. What have I done wrong? Put the right in it. Okay, just make sure test one, verify I can log in. Add credentials. Just going to run this test to make sure that this is working. Okay, so what this has allowed us to do is, what within NUnit, this means that before each test, it's going to create a new instance of the WebDriver. So rather than us having to have that specified within the test, we can just put it here. And then likewise, we could do a teardown. Yep. And here we could just do our driver dot close. So we can take that out. Yep, there we go. So now that we have these in place, this is for every test within this. So we could start to clean up the other tests. If items saved, displayed. Just run that, make sure it's working. Okay. Yeah. I'll just go ahead and do the others as well. And we run all the tests just to make sure. Again, you know, in reality, you'd want to be doing this step by step. You don't want to be running the tests after each one. You want to be, you know, doing little and often commits as well, just to try and save your work. Excellent, it's all working. See, already you'll see, you know, without trying to sort of, well, jump the gun a little bit, but without getting too carried away, you know, just through little things, you can start to clean up the test. So all the initialization and the closing of the WebDriver now just happens in one place. Logging the dashboard is in one place. We've still yet to update the other tests to do this, but we'll get to that. We also don't need to pass the driver anymore because it knows what the driver is at the top of the page. So that's cleaner. Okay, what have I done wrong? What did I do wrong? Why doesn't it know what it is? shout if you can see what I've done wrong, because I'm not quite sure at this point. This is the problem. This is why you need to do little and often, because when things go wrong. Driver. Required for not start field. I'll scroll back a second. This is the problem. Yeah, you should need that. Okay, we can just continue on. So I'm struggling with the live demo syndrome, I'm afraid. So this needs to be sorted. Okay, one of the nice things as well, if you're not aware, within, well, I'm used to C#, but within any language you can put to-dos, and then you can get your task lists, I think they're called, where you get like a little window and you can see all your to-dos. So I'm not sure how we're doing on time, whether or not you want to do questions, whether you want to just continue on. Okay. Okay. So I'll just continue on until I'm told otherwise. So we'll move on to the next test for now. Now we've got this, again, login. Let's just replace this. Dashboard, driver, verify, confirm message. Run this test. Yep, it's passing. Don't know where the Chrome driver went. Okay, so the next thing, so look, let's go on this test. Let's go into here, into branding. Let's go to the branding page. Form control, same keys, test. So again, if you can't quite work out what's going on, just clicking here, right? Okay, so it's using this nim field. It's updating this. Okay. So one of the things to see here as well, it didn't say test before, it was just like that. And it's added test. So what this is actually doing is it's just adding test to whatever text is within there, which isn't good anyway. So before we address that, we'll just clean up the selector. Send keys. Comment that line out, make sure that's working. Okay, so you see now it's test. Okay, so ideally what you'd want to do here is, before doing the send keys, because it's just adding the word test onto whatever string is there first, you want to go to that element and clear. So what this will do is it'll go to this input, it'll clear it out, then it'll send keys test, and then it's actually setting it to what we specify then. So we'll give that a go. No, it didn't work. Why did it work? Okay. Try and run that again. Yeah, okay. Okay. So let's get past this. So I'm going to see if that's that's required. Okay, let's lower it for now. Cool. Again, rather than looking for a solution straight away, like a implicit weight or something like that, or I perhaps would have done before, I'd rather add a comment and then address it a bit later on. So and again, do the same for these. Actually, let's have a look at this test and see if we can remove this one. Verify rooms saved. Test passing. No. Okay. I'll probably reduce it, just add a comment just to say that it needs to be addressed. Okay. Okay, add a comment to remove this one. And this one as well. Okay, so I like to do this, like, it's not something you need to do, but it's nice to remind yourself of what needs to be done as you go through. This is quite interesting. So we saw earlier when we were looking to add a room, like the problem is now that all of these room 101 all the rooms are 101, all the prices are pretty much the same. So you may need to start to look at, well, you can see here, it's doing an assertion, it's that the elements count is not equal to 1. So that could mean that there's no rooms and this would pass. Or, if you're testing something and somebody else is adding a room as you're running these tests, then it's just going to pass and it's not actually checking anything. So it makes you think then, well, what's the value of this check? You need something really that's for each test you run. This should be maybe dynamic. But again, you could fall into the trap of then looking at something like Faker Maker or something like that, and then potentially over-engineering the solution. So yeah, I'd be tempted to perhaps do something like room number for now. No, I'm sorry. And just create a new random file room number. Next, I think between 1999. Okay, so what this will do now is it'll actually generate a new number between 1 and 999. So then what we might want to do here is for the room number, pass this in instead. Okay, sorry. Goodness, I'm sorry. Okay, that was a number, so convert to a string, so we've got to send a string through. Just run this. My rooms are saved. There we go. So you can see at the bottom it's added 117. So now this is going to make our test a lot better as well, because when it comes to this would need to be changed to actually assert that the room number that we're putting in here, the random one, and we might want to do the same for price. we want to assert that that's actually what we're being shown. The fact that we're asserting maybe a count, or even if we asserted the original values, again, there's many values that share the same. So it's not really a great thing. So maybe we can do price. Just a random next between, I don't know, 50 and £100 or something. Just the string, so we can send that through. Sorry. Price. So, you know, if you can do things like this, little things just to try and make your tests a bit more, you know, better checks, and you don't have to introduce other third-party libraries. I propose you do that. You know, try and keep it simple like we did with the admin stuff. Don't pass through the username and password unless you really need to. Just keep it as simple as you can, really. Just run this and see if this is going to work. Cool, so that's worked. Don't recall if we try to remove this. So remove this. Let's see. Cool. So get rid of that as well. The next one. Great. Of course, already this test is a lot quicker. So we need to look at this. This isn't great at all. What's this detail? Detail. Yeah, so just going through each one of these rows. It's not a good selector at all. Okay. Just have a go. I'm not sure if we're going to run out of time or not, but we'll have a look. Instead, what we want to do is we want to make sure that when this is updated, so if we have a look at this container is updated, we want to see if our newly added dynamic row is there. So the first thing we're going to have to do is we'll call this bookings container. By so I'm just trying to have a look at what the best selector would be. Okay, bookings container. Find out what's by next path. This is the thing sometimes, you know, no matter how much you don't like something, if you have to do it this way, then it's the way it is. Find by the ID. Never remember, was it? Let's get the root node. Find out ID in the root node. First. Two. This is the thing now. It's not great to read. Certainly not great to type. Within this, we want to get now all the bookings So what you see is like all of the, so we've got the main container now. The next, what we're going to try and do is get the rooms, but the problem is, so each one has its own unique ID. We don't know what that ID is when we're creating. So we could just grab the last one and then append a number, but it does have this data type. So we could maybe just create a list of web elements. I'm going to call these logins. So these are going to be our individual rows now. And find elements again. So I'm going with XPath because I'm going to have to try and get this data type. So one thing I would say is if you're not that familiar with XPath, data type, there is a cool tool out there called, I believe it's called Selectors Hub. It's well worth taking a look at that as well, because it can help you when, rather than having to know or be familiar with XPath and looking through this and trying to work out the best way to construct XPath, you can actually just use the tool and it will tell you the best selector to use. So yeah, check that out if you haven't already. So we've got a container, and we're going to find, this is going to give us now a list of the elements. I don't know when this session is going to end, I'm afraid. I think I'm overrun already, so I can share my solution at a later point anyway. What we're going to want to do now is, because this panel updates, so when we add, if we added the record here, just expand this, I add something here. It's not instant when it's updating. So what we want to do here is just do like a explicit wait. So we want to do a WebDriver wait. So we could introduce a wait, new driver wait. Okay, the driver, and say we want time span to be hey.
Hey, Viv.
How are you doing?
Good, good. Viv, we have 5 more minutes to spare.
Okay.
Okay, you also have questions to answer, so you can plan accordingly.
Okay. Yeah. To be honest, that the intention is not to be able to complete this anyway. It's just to try and show the approach. So if anyone's got questions, we can try and answer those.
Sure.
We can share the solution at the end if you like.
The questions are, there in the Q&A section.
Okay.
2 questions currently.
So what's your take on the page object model? Is it always the best approach to consider? So, yeah, so it's something that you could consider. It's always something that's in the back of my mind. So pretty much, I try to let the tests drive the design of how the code base looks. So like I mentioned earlier with moving things out to little helpers, using the initialize and cleanup, you could do something whereby I can actually show you an example. So here's one I made earlier. Just give me a second and I can show you. So the end, what I would get to in this would be a point where the tests read something like this. So we would just say, well, our admin page, which is our admin page helper object, go to this page, then log in and insert the rooms displayed. So you see from a readability point of view, page object model approach definitely helps with this. So all the tests now look very clean. But again, if you don't need to do it, I wouldn't say to do it. If you naturally get to that point, great. But if you don't need to do it and you can keep everything contained, you've got your helpers like we've got here within the page, unless you need to do it or this page becomes cluttered, I wouldn't bother doing it. Again, I try to do this just to illustrate extracting common functionality out into one place. But I try to have like a rule of 3. So unless you see a number of instances where you see this repeated pattern, I wouldn't sort of look to just move things out like this straight away. So I definitely think page object models help. This is how maybe the admin page would look. So what you've done, what I've done, is I've extracted this out to its own class, initialize the driver, and then this is all the places where I interact with those elements. The test shouldn't be concerned with, the internals, if you like, or the implementation details. The test should be there just to sort of, if you're trying to read them, you should just be quite clear on the intention and what the tests are doing, which I believe these are sort of a good step towards providing that. And this is extracted away then into a page object model. For some reason I can't say that word today. See, like for the branding, so everything to do with the branding is all moved out to that area. Again, we've got the clear and send keys that we were doing earlier. It's just, I really think it's a really nice way of keeping the code easy to maintain, clean. So hopefully that answers the first question. Again, so design patterns, I think we've touched on this stuff. I wouldn't necessarily look straight away for a pattern. I try to follow principles like, not repeating yourself. Again, if you see things a number of times, then look to move it out. Try and keep it simple. So just because you can do something, don't necessarily do it. So, if you don't need third-party libraries to provide dynamic data, don't do it. As you'll see in my, I can share this afterwards. So I actually started to extract this out, and it was a base page, and I've got generation of test data in one place. So this allows me now to sort of keep the maintenance of this test data in one place. And then this is passed through where it's needed. So for the contact page, messages page, I pass that through. Again, for creating a new room, I pass that through, and it's all managed through one central place, which really helps with that maintenance. So I definitely think page object models, if you haven't looked at it, is something to take a look at. And hopefully this has been interesting, if not for the code, but to see me sweat. That's a really good question. Unfortunately, I haven't done a lot of desktop testing. I can have a look and see if I can find some good resources and share that, maybe on using the hashtag for this event. But it's not something that I've experienced, and it's more web and mobile testing. But I'm sure for that sort of type of testing, maybe they've got their own types of patterns that work well for that type of testing approach, I guess. It's not something I'm familiar with. The UI code is using React as a tech stack to dev, which programmers would you suggest to use the UI test automation? Good question. I haven't done a lot of testing of React applications. I'd probably be tempted to at least have a look at Cypress, something like that. I've used Protractor before for JavaScript, to test JavaScript front ends. If anybody in the chat has got any thoughts to the, or answers to the questions, feel free to sort of jump in. But, I tried to stick to the tech stack that the team are using, because tests shouldn't be just left down to the testers. It should be a tool team approach, and it always helps to use the same programming languages to be able to get the support from your team. So if you're not sure, maybe have a spike, try out some different tools and frameworks and see what works best for you. But there's always lots to consider. It's not, you shouldn't use something just because everybody else is using it, or because it's the top, programming language used by, Google, for instance. You need to work, within your team and use what's right for your team, really. I think that's all the questions answered.